and welcome to everyone. This is Adelaide O'Dunson of Healthier Living, and I want to welcome you to the Wellness Revolution. Our focus this season is on embracing wholeness. And what we've planned this season is not only some of the finest interviews with amazing guests like David Wolfe, our guest tonight, that will assist you in embracing your wholeness, your recognition that health is your divine birthright, and there are natural ways in which you can achieve not just good health, but great health, optimum health, and really create the life that you want and deserve to have. I am so excited to have David Wolfe here tonight. For those of you who don't know David, and personally I think David, for many of us, he's a household name, but he really deserves to be a household name because of the work that he is doing. He's considered one of the world's top authorities on natural health, beauty, nutrition, herbalism, organic superfoods, and one of my favorite things, chocolate. He is a leader in the field because of his vision and his mission, his incredible ability to educate, and also his incredible business skills. David has achieved rock star status in this field, and he really is someone who is an inspiration to a lot of us, and he's helped people to take charge of their health and their lives. And his commitment is really to help us to be healthy and to be healthy at an amazing level. I don't know if any of you read the blog that David put out. I follow David. I love his work, but he did a blog recently, which for those of you who don't know him, I think really says a lot about who he is and what he has dedicated his life to for the last 20 years. So I really want to encourage you to take the time to go to David's blog. And what he wrote about was, he wrote about what true wealth was. And he started it off and said, why I am not a millionaire. Well, when I got that, of course, it caught my eye. But truthfully, I thought David was a millionaire. He's he's been doing this work forever. He's incredible. He does amazing work. He's owned, if you ever go and see him at the Longevity Conference, and 1,200 people go to his events, and it's absolutely packed. And it's just extraordinary. And in this blog, which I will put the link in my email, but it was in the Longevity Warehouse blogspot.com. This is what he said. He says true wealth or happiness in oneself is directly proportional to the happiness one brings to others. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to David Avocado Wolfe. This is who he is. The work he does is extraordinary, and we're honored to have him here with us for an hour.
Thank you so much, Adelaide. That was an amazing introduction.
Well, it says everything I feel about you, and it's absolutely true. All right. Now, I know everybody wants to hear you give us masses of amazing information, and your topic tonight is superfoods to boost your immune system, your adrenals, and thyroid function. And when I was discussing this topic, I realized, truthfully, I could have picked anything because David is such a mine of information about so many things. But we absolutely live in a time where there are so many immune disorders, and there is such an epidemic of people who are dealing with stress and adrenal fatigue, thyroid dysfunction, that this is a great topic, and I know that you have a wealth of information of superfoods that we can begin to incorporate into our lives right now that will make a huge difference. And let's face it, inflammation, chronic inflammation, has been really found to be at the root of so many conditions and diseases. So I think this is a great topic for us, David.
I agree. I love this topic, actually. I think it's so pertinent to our times, and it's absolutely critical in the work that I do. My work is about educating people on what our food choices really can be, what's possible, and opening up the possibilities so that we can see that there's much more out there than the conventional fare or the food pyramids that we've been sold in the past.
Great. So let's just jump right in there, and let's talk about the depleted immune systems that we have, and what are some of the immediate changes? If you had to just tell everybody on the call today an immediate change that they could make that would make a radical difference in terms of their immune system, and I know there are many, but I wonder where you would start.
Actually, the most immediate and simplest thing you could do instantly is get grounded, is get connected back to the earth. And in the middle of winter, which is where we're at right now, for most of us who are on this call right now in the northern hemisphere, that doesn't happen a lot in the winter, and that causes static electricity to build up in our house, to build up on our bodies, and that actually disables our immune system. There is a connection between the production of static electricity. You know that feeling around November when the atmosphere dries out in the northern hemisphere and you start getting sparks and shocks when you touch metal objects? That is actually a symptom that there's going to be trouble with our immune system, because static electricity breaks down our immune system, and static electricity is pushed off of us immediately when we just go out and we touch a tree, we touch the ground, we go walk on the beach, we go walk on a grass lawn, or go walk in a park barefoot. So that's number one thing I want to put out there, because even though it sounds so obvious and so simple, there's a huge amount of research over the last 11 years, actually 11 major studies, that have indicated that this thing of not touching the earth, wearing shoes all the time, being in houses all the time, being on the second story of a house all the time, being in offices all the time, has a huge effect on our immune system. And we've got to touch the earth to discharge that static electricity and get our immune system charged up with the negative electricity of the earth instead of the static electricity of the atmosphere, which is a positive charge.
One of the things that you do at your conferences, which I think really is such a powerful experience for people, is that you ground everybody, don't you?
That's right, and this is what we learned. With every one of us, every morning we get into a shower, all of a sudden we have great ideas, everything's, like clear. All of a sudden what we were meditating on for 24 hours is suddenly comes crystal clear. We know what we're going to do, or we have the idea fresh in our mind. It's because we're grounded. That's what's been figured out. When you're in a shower, you're electrically grounded to the earth because the pipes and the water are connected right into the earth, so there's an electrical current that comes up through those pipes and hits you and rains down negatively charged electricity on you, or negative ions. We've probably heard that before. And you can get these ideas all the time if you're grounded all the time, and that's why we ground people in our audiences, because we want to keep them in that fresh state of the mind, just like they have when they're in the shower in the morning.
And through David, I learned about grounding a couple of years ago, and Clint Ober, who was the one who did this amazing research in his book Earthing, who, again, David was the person who introduced me to him, really will be on our show, and he will expand on this topic. But that's one immediate thing that we could do. So let's talk about some of the other things that we can do to deal with this issue of chronic inflammation. And why is inflammation such a problem? And, what is your sense of why it's so rampant?
Well, I think it's a number of factors. I mean, when we think of inflammation, at least I think of irritation. I think of the irritation of the stress. I think of the irritation of all the chemicals in our environment, which I think you've heard me say this before, Adelie, but it's 77,000 chemicals that we've introduced into the environment since 1940 as a member of the human race. We've got to now start looking at what the impact of this is. And part of it is it's irritating us. It irritates our system. It disables our immune system. Carcinogens can trigger off mutation of cells. So that's part of it. And then part of it's dehydration. Water is the great anti-inflammatory agent of all. So drinking more water would be my next statement as to what would be the best thing to do, second behind grounding ourselves, to fight inflammation or inflammaging, and to actually help boost our immune system.
Well, I'm going to ask the next question, because all waters aren't equal, and we have all this information about our water. What do you recommend? What is the best source of water?
Well,
in the research that you've done.
I'm a spring water. I'm very biased in this area because I'm a spring water hunter. I'm probably one of the leading spring water hunters in the world. I travel all over the world, and I go to wild springs in Australia. I go to wild springs in Asia and Indonesia, all across North America, Central America, South America. I've been to wild springs all over the world. I mean, I've been recently looking at wild springs in Antarctica. I mean, that's how far into this thing I am. Spring water that comes out of the earth, fresh from the earth, and when you find a great source of spring water that comes right out of the earth in your local area, and you find out that it's free of contaminants, it's 000 on everything and bacteria. You can have these things tested for just a few $100s if you want to. Usually someone else has done the work for you. You have free water forever, and you have the most pure, original, perfect water that Mother Earth produced for you forever. And that's the power of finding a local spring in your area. So I only drink spring water. I've got spring water with me right now from Mount Tam, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, that I harvested about a week ago. And this water's fed every ship going out of San Francisco Harbor for 400 years. I mean, what a history. How amazing. That's what I'm into, Adelie. I'm not into tap water. I'm not into tap water filters. I definitely believe you've got to have filters in your house, for sure. But
what
I'm really
about reverse osmosis?
Well, reverse osmosis is deader than a doornail. It's dead, really dead. It'll kill your plants faster than any other type of water, by the way. Distilled water is a lot better in terms of its health-giving qualities than reverse osmosis. Now, having said that, let's say you're in a situation, you're like, look, we got reverse osmosis hooked up in our house. You must put something back into that water that's living in order to give it a pattern. For example, squeeze a lemon into it, or put a blade of wheatgrass into it, or something. But for me personally, I'm not just into water that's going to help us survive. I'm into water that's going to help us thrive, and that is spiritual, that connects us with our environment, and so we can understand where water comes from and the cycle of water and the health-giving qualities of water, and that comes from spring water.
And in our local communities, are there any places where we can go to get the research on the water and where they are and getting it tested? Any suggestions?
Absolutely.
On that? Okay.
Absolutely. Every town in America has a facility that tests well water. So what you do, usually you go to one of those facilities and you say, well, okay, what do I need to do? They give you 3 little vials. So you go to your local spring. Let's say you found a spring. You're on the Internet. You found out there's a spring down the road from your house that people are drinking from. You fill up those 3 vials. You take it back to the well water testing place, and then you let them run their tests on it. Now, if you live in Ohio or a place where there's a lot of pesticide runoff that gets into spring water, you may have to go elsewhere to get your water, and definitely you want to test it. It may be clean, it may not be. But if you're in a place like the Rocky Mountains, if you're in Western Canada, if you're in the Blue Mountains of Australia, you won't have those problems, but you can still test it anyway. And I recommend that you make sure that you feel comfortable and settled, with the water that you're drinking. And if testing it gives you that feeling of safety, for a few $100s, it's a good investment. Plus, you can tell everyone what you found out.
Great. Okay. So let's go on to number 3. So we've got grounding for free, finding out about our water and getting spring water, and then what about let's start talking about vitamins and superfoods and all the amazing knowledge that you've accumulated from traveling all over the world and really doing this research.
Okay, well, I'm really, I guess, biased towards food. I'd rather get my nutrients from food than, say, vitamin and mineral supplements. I think vitamin and mineral supplements can be very beneficial for folks, but I'm very partial towards food, and that's what led me eventually to the superfood category, which are things like raw chocolate and goji berries and maca and the microalgae, the super algae like spirulina and blue-green algae and chlorella and marine phytoplankton. And what these are foundational. These are raw materials for building blood, for rebuilding tissue, for rebuilding nerve pathways, for building up muscle, for tearing down and breaking down dead cells. These are the raw materials. And then what happens is if you take another category of superfoods, which we call tonic herbs or even super herbs like reishi mushroom, then you've got a really powerful 1-2 punch. Like if you take, for example, AFA blue-green algae with reishi mushroom. AFA blue-green algae helps to drive stem cells into your blood. Reishi mushroom shows up, which is, by the way, the most well-studied herb in the history of the world, and takes those stem cells and cuts them up into white blood cells, so all of a sudden you have an immunological powerhouse behind you. And all of a sudden you have weaponry. You have an arsenal of materials. This is the education that I've been putting out there, is taking these kind of superfoods or super herbs or whatever we want to call them, and not making them so foreign and exotic, but really just making them part of your everyday food. And if you do that, if you get to that point where it's part of your everyday food, within a couple of years, your whole immunological picture is completely different. You're a different person. I had a friend of mine on the phone the other day. He lost over 100 pounds. Actually, I think it's about 150 pounds, and he's been with me for years. And people ask him all the time, what's the difference? What's the difference? And I finally asked him that question, like, what is the difference between before and now? And he said, well, it's immunological. I just feel like I'm not susceptible to stuff anymore. And that's the message I want to put out there. It's a preventative message. If we've been paying attention to cancer and all these other conditions, we're finding more and more that has a lot to do with our immune system. So let's build an immune arsenal so we become immune to all these problems and we're not worried about them anymore. And these superfoods that I just named and the medicinal mushrooms like reishi, which is another category of superfoods or super herbs, play a huge role in all that.
Well, one of the things that you talked about, because I find that every single time I'm exposed to you and every time I go to longevity, I'm just taken to this new level and I learn something new and I incorporate it into my life. And certainly being introduced to mushrooms and chaga mushrooms and reishi. But one of the things you talked about was the host defense when you had Paul Stamets, and you talked about combining the mushrooms and taking them. And I know that sometimes when people are hearing all of this, it can feel like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So one of the things about David is that his Longevity Now program, which is his signature program, really teaches you how to, we're hearing all these amazing things, and then how can I integrate it into my life in an easy way? And you actually show us how to do that, right?
That's been my whole life's work, is taking exotic information, chunking it down to its simplest bits, like, okay, great, reishi mushroom extracts do X, Y, Z. How do we get those reishi mushrooms in a form that's easy to eat, that kids can eat, that everybody likes, that will do the trick in our body, so we don't even have to know the science. We can just eat the stuff, and we know that we're getting the benefit. That's been my work throughout my whole life. So I try to make it as easy as possible always.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about some more of these superfoods and things that people may not know that, you're really into or have added into your own regimen that is really making a difference in terms of rebuilding that immune system.
I am a huge fan of aloe vera, and I am a huge fan of noni fruit, which are very similar chemically. They're basically in herbalism they'd be called demulcents, which means they have gelling compounds in them. So if you've ever played around with fresh raw aloe vera, it's got all this jelly kind of stuff in there. This is very powerful immunological substance. Not only is it healing of all your skin cells inside your body and out, so we have skin cells that cover our entire digestive tract and all our intestines, and aloe vera heals all of that, so does noni. But those gels have very powerful antiviral and antifungal components that can help to heal us of digestive infections. They can help to heal us of fungal infections. And these are substances that have been very well studied over the years because they've had strong efficacy over so long. In fact, in Asia, aloe vera is an absolute phenomenon. Like in Korea, an absolute phenomenon. I mean, there's millions and millions of aloe vera plants being grown and being used in all different kinds of products, just coming out of Korea, just that nation, let alone everywhere else. And noni I'm a noni farmer because we have a farm in Hawaii where we grow noni. Noni is something we may have heard about noni juice before.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
We've heard that, but that's not what I'm talking about. That noni juice is like a noni vinegar. It's like, if you let the stuff rot, then it that's what you get for noni juice. I'm talking about the fresh food, and if you can't get the fresh fruit,
where would you get it? I mean, is noni juice? Can we go down to the? I mean, where am I going to get noni fruit?
If you're in Puerto Rico, it's there. If you're in Hawaii, it's there. If you're in Indonesia, it's around. If you're in the tropics, basically, it's around. If you're in Costa Rica, it's there. I was in the Amazon. They had noni in the Amazon, which is a new introduction, but it's such a powerful healing plant, it made its way there. Now, if you try to eat noni like biting into an apple, it's awful. I mean, it's just the worst thing ever.
It's really
but it's really, oh my God, it's bad, dude. But you have to pay to play, I guess. Some of these things don't taste that great, but you can work with it. And the way you work with noni is you throw a bunch in a blender. If you have fresh stuff, if you have the powder, it's easier to work with and still has the magic. The powder, you can just throw it into orange juice and drink it, and it's done. That's easy. But if you have the fresh fruit, you have to blend it into, say, orange juice or coconut water, and then strain out the seeds and then drink that, which is fine and actually tastes very good. Okay,
but I don't even know. Is noni something that you could find in a Whole Foods or in an Erewhon?
In Erewhon, yes. Erewhon, for those of you who don't know, is a super health food store in Los Angeles, probably the greatest health food store in the world. But Whole Foods isn't onto the noni train yet, although you might be able to find encapsulated noni powder, or you might be able to find noni fruit leathers, which are amazing. You remember those? Remember we had fruit leathers when we were kids, like fruit roll-ups?
Yeah, absolutely.
So somebody got smart and said, hey, how about we take the most powerful healing fruit in the world, noni, and make a fruit roll-up out of it? And those are pretty fun, actually.
Okay. So in terms of noni, the juices, which we've all sort of had that offered to us, would you recommend that we get the powder form rather than the juice?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the original research on that because the noni juice, it's great, it's fun, but it's not really going to do what you want it to do and what's been promised to us. But there is something in noni that will do it, and we got to work to figure out how we're going to get noni fruit out to the people because the USDA won't allow you to ship fresh noni out of Hawaii. So we were figuring, God, what are we going to do here? So we went to work to see if there's a way, and we arrived at the noni fruit roll-up idea. That's a really amazing idea. And then noni powder does the trick. It has the magic.
So, all right, now let's talk about, you talked about aloe vera, but okay, what form do I buy my aloe vera in, and what's the best way to take it? Are all aloe veras equal? Probably not.
They're not, no. There are some good products out there, Adelie, that are bottled aloe vera products. However, I have to say this because, I'm kind of an aloe vera fanatic. There's nothing like the fresh stuff. There's nothing like it. You can't buy anything in a bottle that equals the fresh, and there is an enzymatic factor. This is the whole thing about live food. When you have an unpasteurized, natural, raw food, there's an enzyme factor that's there. There's a certain factor that's lost when you bottle it, and that particular factor with aloe vera, it's an antifungal enzyme. So if you have fresh aloe vera, meaning you go to Erewhon, for example, they have fresh aloe vera leaves there, and you fillet off the skin and you get the gel out, you just blend that into orange juice or blend that into your smoothie or blend that into whatever you're drinking or blend it into a salad dressing or whatever. You can even blend it into chocolate. It actually works pretty well. You get the deeper level of the magic and the healing.
Great. Okay. That's wonderful. So you do the natural thing. Let's talk about, so someone has sent a question because they live in New York and they're saying, well, what sort of water can they get? But there are presumably areas outside New York where they can get spring water?
Right. There are incredible springs all around New York. In fact, there is a spring actually in Staten Island. I don't know. Staten Island's a little bit too much in the middle of the action for me to drink the water from. But there is a spring actually naturally in Staten Island. There were somewhere around 20 different springs in Manhattan originally, and they've all been capped over. In fact, there was a huge one that was right at it's currently a hospital in Harlem, actually, and it's on 132nd Street. And underneath that hospital was a spring that had so much water pouring out of it that it could have nourished all of New York City. See, this is why I have to put this message out there, because I'm hoping one day somebody's going to hear it. We went so unconscious that instead of just taking the natural spring water that comes from Manhattan and feeding that and nourishing all of Lower Manhattan with it, we poured cement into it, hundreds of tons of cement into it, concreted it over, and put a hospital in on top of it. I mean, this is the insanity that we're dealing with. And unless somebody calls it and says, like, what in the world are we doing? This is insane. It's going to keep going. We're going to keep doing this stuff. We had a great spring right here in Southern California out in Hemet, and too many people were going to get their water there, so the fire department showed up and poured 100 tons of concrete into it and clogged it up. It's crazy.
It's insane. Sure. Okay, I want you to talk more about superfoods. Perhaps talk about some of the foods that actually are anti-inflammatories as well.
Okay, well, turmeric. Out of all the foods we could buy, the superfoods, it's hard to buy superfoods in a regular grocery store, but there is one that does make it into a regular grocery store, and it sits there right next to the ginger, and it's turmeric. Turmeric is the most powerful anti-inflammatory substance you can get for your money. I don't think there's even a close second. And it's the orange pigments, the cucurminoids that are in the turmeric. They give it that very powerful anti-inflammatory action. And this is important if you have arthritis, if you have any kind of chronic debilitating pain in your hips, for example. This is a food where you got to be on this like regularly. If you don't have any pain at all, turmeric is an extraordinarily nutritious food. And actually, if you really go into the teachings of Rudolf Steiner about these super roots, because turmeric is a root, they're ultimately brain foods. They expand your awareness. They actually build consciousness. And so there is a deeper piece of the puzzle just beyond immediate anti-inflammatory action that these foods provide.
Wonderful. Now, in terms of turmeric, then, ways of actually preparing it, just kind of cooking it in food? I mean, because we're trying to eat really healthy, or do you put it in liquids, smoothies? How do you have your turmeric?
This is a great question. Thank you for asking. And I learned this from a friend of mine who's an incredible permaculture activist. She's the most incredible gardener I've ever met in my life. And she was born with a blood disease, so she has to take very specific actions every day to deal with her condition so she doesn't have any symptoms. And one of the things she does turmeric every which way. That's what she taught me. You can do turmeric in a fruit smoothie and it goes fine. You can put turmeric in savory food. You can blend it, for example, into a savory dressing and put it right on your salad. It goes great that way. You can juice. Yeah, you can juice it. You can juice turmeric. Let's say you're into doing celery, carrot juice or something like that. Put turmeric right in there. You can take turmeric and liquefy it, blend it, and then pour it onto, like we create these sweet potato. We basically could take sweet potato, dice it up, and then we put a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, and then we'll take the juice of certain things like turmeric, put that on there, and then dehydrate it. And then you create these little crunchy things that are just wonderful. Or if you're into using your stove that way, you can put in your stove and cook it. That's a really good way to use it too, because you're kind of spiking an already amazing food, sweet potato, with another super food, which would be the turmeric.
Great. Okay. All right, so we've covered water, we've covered grounding, we've talked about some foods that we can have, we've talked about turmeric. What else do you want people to take away on this call in terms of anti-inflammatory? And then I want to touch on the adrenals, and people have questions about thyroid, so I'll start asking their questions.
Okay, well, I just want to get this idea interjected in this conversation, and that is the anti-inflammatory substances that are found in these superfoods and herbs are actually color pigments. That's usually how they show up, which means they're antioxidants. And that means that really richly colored foods, deep reds, deep yellows, deep oranges, purples, all those rainbow colors are important to be considering in our daily diet. And when we're having, for example, goji berries or blueberries, we're getting very powerful anti-inflammatory pigments into our body. And the key teaching there is a little is good, but more is probably better of the fresh. Now, if you have dried goji berries and blueberries, it's going to be a little bit more concentrated. You can't eat a ton of them. But if they're fresh, then you can eat a lot. I mean, I've eaten as much as 5 pounds of blueberries in a couple days. You know, that's the only thing I was eating those couple days. And that's
wow,
the
amazing.
level. I just want to put that out there because sometimes we think about, for example, you know, our dinner, and sometimes we think about, okay, what are we going to have? We're going to have a salad. We're going to have this, you know, maybe potato. We're going to have chicken, you know, whatever the dinner looks like. But maybe we want to start thinking about skipping dinner. Maybe we want to start thinking, hey, let's just fast on berries and just do that for a couple days. We want to start opening that conversation up because a lot of times the inflammatory response is a response to our food. It's a response to the foods we're eating, and if we stop eating those foods, we will stop the inflammatory response.
And that's really interesting, too, because then you can also start seeing what's actually creating it if you have that periods of time when you actually stop eating. You can really begin to feel the difference when you're eating those foods. We have a question from Lucille, and she says, if you had the choice between fresh superfoods that are not organic and organic raw superfood powder, which would you recommend? And I guess this is the budgetary issue.
Okay, well, it's also a very good question. Like, what would I prefer? Would I prefer fresh food or powdered food? And that's a tough question. I mean, I know the value of fresh food. Probably as much as anybody in the world. I mean, I ate nothing but fresh food, no dried anything, no supplements, anything for years of my life. And, you know, no cooked food, all raw, fresh food. And I get the benefit of that. I also get the benefit of powders. For example, raspberry powder or turmeric powder, because the concentration is much greater of the cucurbinoids in the turmeric, for example, or the epicatechin pigments of the raspberry. It's just much greater, so there's a medicinal effect there. And what I usually do is both now. That's what I learned. I've felt like that's really the future, because we not only need to eat the fresh food and get those nutrients today, but we also need to build up for deficits in the past, deal with what the stresses are of the moment, and also build a reservoir for the future. So it's a tough question to answer. I mean, for me personally, I can live on powdered foods at this point for long periods of time if I had to. So that's what I would choose if I had to choose between non-organic and organic, or non-organic fresh food and organic powdered foods. I'd choose the powdered foods now. But maybe in the beginning I would have chosen the fresh foods because I needed it more.
Okay, but at least that gives us some options. So that's really cool. I just want to know, before I start asking questions, because there are so many, I want you to be able to say, is there anything else that you want to say in terms of the other superfoods, anything else we need to know? And I know there's a ton of information, which, by the way, in the Longevity Now program, you just get so much more information. Everything we're talking here is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the information that David gives you. But are there any other supplements or not supplements, I'm going to say superfoods that are absolutely critical for people to incorporate in the diet? And then I'm going to start asking some questions that relate to thyroidism and adrenals.
Okay, well, I mean, we've covered quite a few. I've mentioned raw chocolate. You know, this concentration of nutrients there is amazing as a superfood, and all the microalgae and goji berry and the super root from the Andes, maca, and turmeric, and the medicinal mushrooms. I think we have to say something for the Chinese herbs. I think we have to say something for a few of the top Ayurvedic herbs, which are really superfoods. You know, they're not herbs like oregano or marjoram or thyme. This is like a whole category of food that's been forgotten. And I think we have to say something for nettles, stinging nettles. You know, my friends in the UK, they live off stinging nettles, and whenever I'm over there, that's what we're on to. We are on the stinging nettle program. We're juicing it. We're making tea from it. We're eating them. It's just really a powerful anti-inflammatory. And why? Well, it has the histamine reaction thing in it, like if you get stung by it. So that's kind of nature's way of telling you, like, hey, if you eat this, you'll get an inflammatory reaction from this food. And that's something anybody can research. You can find out that nettles not only are anti-inflammatory, they're hypoallergenic, and they actually help you with allergies and asthma, something to be aware of. They're invasive where those problems are epidemic, by the way, where you have great levels of inflammation and high levels of asthma and high levels of allergies, and that's kind of nature's way of telling you what you need. The Chinese herbs, I want to mention about astragalus. The research about astragalus on longevity is extraordinary, recent research. I think everybody needs to become familiar with this superfood. It's a root, astragalus root. I got so into it, I'm now growing it on my farm. I mean, I just absolutely am enamored with this nitrogen-fixing super root substance that's not only anti-inflammatory, it's absolutely immunologically top of the class. I mean,
what is the best way to take that? I mean, you're actually growing the root. So what do you recommend for all of us? How do we get it, and in what form is the best way to take it?
Well, the very best form that's out there is the FIT extract, fingerprint identical transfer technology extract, FITT, of astragalus. That's been brought to the U.S. by Dragon Herbs, and that's just a phenomenal product beyond comprehension. I love the FIT extracts of all herbs, but especially astragalus. It's a breakthrough in herbal technology. It's basically taking the raw herb and turning it into a crystallized powder using high pressure, low pressure, 1,000 times per second, and then vacuum evaporating the liquid off, and then you're left with the crystallized powder, which is the best herbal extraction technology ever discovered, and it was discovered by the Chinese about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You can also do tinctures. You can get astragalus as whole pressed roots, and you can just make tea out of it. I recommend looking at all of it because it's nice to get familiar with all of it. Using tinctures, making tea, taking this stuff as powder. I do all of it, and I think it's good to have that education and that experience of using it in all those ways.
David, I just have a practical question. Look, can you describe kind of a day or how you eat, what you eat, kind of what is kind of your daily or your weekly
intake
eating
of food.
Habits. Yeah. It's like, okay, let me try and get a picture of this.
So I put this is what I've been doing recently on Twitter and Facebook because I know people are wondering that same exact thing. So I'm like, okay, here's what I had for breakfast, here's what I had for lunch, here's what I had for dinner. I've been doing that more. But generally, I mean, my diet is basically raw foods. Things like tangerines. I had tons of tangerines today, oranges, I had a few pistachios, and then I did a chaga tea with ho shu wu in it, which is another one of my favorite herbs in the world. It's a Chinese herb, ho shu wu. In America, we sometimes call it faux tea, and it's just one of the most incredible herbs in the world. I got into growing that, too. I love that particular plant. And, that's my day thus far. I mean, later I might do a little bit of, I've got some herbs in my little medicine bag over here, and I may do some of those. I'm going to look at that. I've got my algae products, blue-green algae, which is the AFA, the chlorella. I might have a little bit of that for dinner. So I don't really eat a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, although if I go to a raw food restaurant, then probably what I'll do is eat very little all day and then go there and order, all their cool stuff that they have, so I'm hungry enough to eat it all.
But it doesn't sound like you eat a ton of food.
I definitely don't eat a ton of food, like if you saw what I was eating, but I definitely absorb the food.
Right. The food that you eat. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely absorb my food better than most people do. I mean, I get greater uptake of it. So that's over years and years of playing around with diet as a gastronaut. I think you know that, Adelaide. I'm a gastronaut.
I love that. And I think I want to just share this. If you meet David in person, then you'll see he actually agreed to give us all of his videos, videos of the sessions and streaming video of David at his Longevity Now conferences, which is amazing. So you sort of get all of David, just giving you this incredible information on so many topics. But you will see he has phenomenal energy. He travels all over the world. He never stops. He is like the ultimate energizer bunny. And that's why I want to ask, like, what are you doing? What are you eating? What does your day look like in terms of how to do that?
It really is different, Adelie. I mean, if I told you what I actually did the last week, you wouldn't even believe it. You'd be like, what are you doing? Why would you do all that? I mean, the actual effort of what happened in this last week over the last 7 days was so full on. I mean, I flew into L.A., was here for 24 hours, drove to San Francisco, doing calls all the way there, set up for the Fancy Food Show, did that for 3 days, all day and all night, driving with all the whole equipment, all the whole setup of a booth, everything, right in downtown San Francisco, get the whole thing set up, put myself up in a hotel down the road, carrying all the equipment in there every day, including the computers, everything, so I didn't want to leave it at the booth overnight, and then coming out of there, packing the whole show down, driving out to go pick up a Ormus Gold product that, it's a particular project that I've been working on for years, doing errands along the way, finally getting back to a friend's house at 3:30 in the morning, getting up at 7 in the morning, fixing a whole bunch of computer problems that I had with a friend of mine who's an expert in that, driving out of there to a 3-hour meeting in Walnut Creek, then driving right from there to visit another friend of mine with her 2 babies just to say hello, and then driving 5 hours through the middle of the night, getting into Ojai, California in the middle of the night, like 2 in the morning, getting up the next morning, driving down to Los Angeles. I mean, that's every single week. It's been like that for years.
And so I want you to get that David is doing all of that, and you can feel the level of energy, passion, engagement, and when you see him, you see how fit he is. So it is really extraordinary, I must say, and you are an inspiration in that way. I want to ask a few of the questions, and then I want to tell everyone who's listening, we actually are you're going to have to write in. And if you want to have David for a Q&A session, and we can persuade him to come back for a Q&A session, then we can really address all of these questions. But
I'll do anything for you.
I love you. I love you, David. So, yeah, you have to let me know with our speakers who you really want to have back for a Q&A, and then I'm there and I'm just feeding your questions to David. So I encourage you to get those emails going, talk on Facebook, let me know. So let's start some of these because I'm going to give people an opportunity and then some people to actually get you live, but they have to promise to be, what's the word, sort of lasered. Okay. Someone wants you to talk about calcification. And I know this is a big topic, so say something about that because it certainly relates to what we're talking about.
Absolutely, and it's a big part of my Longevity Now program, by the way. And the calcification has been very strongly correlated to every inflammatory condition. And there has been some research that suggests pretty strongly that underneath the inflammation, any kind of inflammation, is a calcification, which means the buildup of a calcium nodule. That could be everything from a bone spur to coronary plaque and brain plaque and even plaque on our gums. These conditions, from not only the ones I named, but also kidney stones, gallstones, cataracts, hard of hearing, tinnitus, all have these calcification components, which means the calcium, the overproduction of it or the presence of it or the inability to make the calcium soluble, all has a very deep and intrinsic role in the development of inflammation and disease conditions. So part of my approach with the Longevity Now program and just in general, strategically, is to bring down bad calcium levels in our body. In fact, that's written into everything that I do. It's always about bringing down bad calcium in our body. So right away, you're probably going, whoa, is this guy into calcium supplements or not? And you're probably going, it doesn't sound like it. And I'm definitely not into calcium supplements at all. In fact, calcium supplements, the latest news today two studies have now shown, and this is going to be coming up more and more, the latest news is two studies have now shown that calcium supplements have been correlated to coronary heart disease or coronary plaque formation or calcification of the heart. Calcification, by the way, is the primary modus operandi of arthritis. So the idea here is that there's something definitely wrong with our calcium metabolism as we get older, and there's something definitely wrong with our calcium metabolism when we have a condition, a disease condition, and what is that something? And my feeling is from the research is that we're dealing with infection organisms like viruses, perhaps bad forms of bacteria like staphylococcus, certain types of staphylococcus, and fungi that form calcium shells. And when we have damage to our tissue, we have an injury, those shells can actually build up a plaque. Just like in the ocean, if you go and you disturb the ocean, you put a dock or a pier in, after a few years you notice that the pier pylons are all loaded with barnacles and mollusks and oysters and all different kinds of shell-forming organisms. Well, as above, so below. Maybe this is happening at a microscopic level, and as far as I can tell from my research, that is what's happening. That we're being shelled up or we're being calcified by these microorganisms that are recycling us, and we have to get strategic on how we're dealing with our immune system, hence the superfoods and the super herbs in order to fight these things off.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for that question. Now, I have Bridget in Ireland, and she really wants your advice on how to reverse hypothyroidism, or how she can maximize her energy and well-being if she has this condition. She's going to start to grounding herself and using water, and she's been steadily eating an increasing amount of greens and raw food, and she's beginning to add superfoods. What else can she do to actually reverse this condition?
Okay, now let me just get clarification here. It's hypothyroidism. Is that right?
Yes, hypothyroidism. Yes.
Okay, so that means low thyroid. Okay,
yeah.
So my friend Truth Calkins and I, we actually wrote a book on this subject, and it's called the Thyroid Health Program, and that research that Truth and I have been doing on this has indicated to both of us that the thyroid is a place in our body that will draw into itself toxic mimics of the minerals that we actually need more than the other part of our bodies. Let me flesh that out a little bit more. So, you need iodine. Definitely need iodine. In fact, we're not getting enough. None of us are getting enough. In fact, hypothyroidism has been correlated to low levels of iodine not only in your life, but actually for several generations going back in your lineage may have had too low of iodine. So that's something you want to look into is getting into iodine and understanding how to utilize iodine and getting into eating seaweeds and understanding the importance of the iodine that comes from the sea. But Truth and I both believe that the toxic imposter idea is what's really underlying all of this problem with thyroid cancer. For example, radioactive iodine, which is, radioactive iodine 131 or 134, that will get sucked up by your thyroid because your thyroid thinks it's real iodine. That's called a toxic imposter or a toxic mimic. And this is why we have epidemics of thyroid cancer in eastern Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in Connecticut, and New York City. It's because there's so much radioactive iodine around from, Indian Point, and then there's a bunch of nuclear reactors, including 3 Mile Island in eastern Pennsylvania, that have leaked radiation into the environment and leaked radioactive iodine into the environment. Now, as much as I know you're in Ireland and you're thinking this can't be affecting me, and absolutely it can be affecting you. We're all affected by radioactive iodine that was spewed out by Fukushima. So we want to be able to saturate ourselves with the good iodine so we don't absorb the bad. And that means, again, iodine supplements is a really good idea. I like liquid iodines, and it means eating seaweed. It also means being very, very aware of the quality of the food that we're eating, because we might uptake other toxic imposters and toxic minerals from our food, like radioactive strontium or something like that. And we've got to make sure that we have enough goodies in our body, enough of the right minerals from superfoods. A good one, I'll tell you, a big one on the list for thyroid trouble is chlorella. I really recommend chlorella. It's the highest chlorophyll-containing food in the world. 10% chlorophyll. It's also extraordinarily high in magnesium and extraordinarily high in potassium, which drives off the body's ability to take up radioactive cesium, which is a potassium mimic, and
so
it
with
will also drive oxycontin.
With somebody like Bridget who has hypothyroidism, what is the quantity? Where do you start? How much would you take?
Dr. David Brownstein wrote a great book called Iodine, when he recommends working up to, not starting at, but working up to 13 to 15 milligrams of iodine per day, which is, give you an idea, that's easily over 100 times the U.S. RDA, or recommended daily allowance. Oh, that's over 100 times. Now, he's an iodine doctor, and he's been working with patients for years, and that's what his recommendation is now. Some people are allergic to iodine. So this, again, like with all nutrition, not one size fits all. These are just general probabilities and recommendations based on the probabilities. It's not going to work for everybody. Definitely all of us can benefit from eating more seaweeds. I really like kelp, because kelp is pretty much the superfood of the seaweed world. It's the most nutritious, most mineral rich, has the most iodine that's usable by the thyroid.
David, someone is asking about maca because they've heard that it's good for thyroid problems and menopausal women. Is that true?
That's true. That's what the research has shown. There's some interesting developments in that area, and what it's indicating is that even if we have a toxic thyroid, we've accumulated toxic debris, you have an override for your thyroid, which is your hypothalamus, which is a master gland for your whole endocrine system. And apparently that's how maca works. That's what the research over the last 40, 50 years of research, Gloria Popovici down there in Peru, she's done the most research on this over the last 40 years. She's found out that maca works primarily through your hypothalamus, and it's somehow able to override any thyroid problems and get your thyroid output functional so you're producing the T3 that you need. Even if everything else looks like it hasn't changed, even if your numbers, for example, you go and get your blood numbers and you're like, well, I should have a thyroid problem, but I don't anymore. Your numbers would say you have a problem, but since you're taking maca, you feel good. That's kind of what I've seen, and that's what Popovici has seen.
Okay, so and what's the best form to take it in? As a powder?
Yeah, as a powder. Maca powder is really one of the great superfoods that's come in the last 10 years. I absolutely am in love with this food. It's in the cruciferous vegetable family, so it has all the benefits that the cruciferous vegetable family provides, but it has this overriding effect on our endocrine system, in particular our hypothalamus and thyroid, and to some degree our adrenals and reproductive organs. That's really positive. It's really a positive thing to add in.
Okay. Great. Basha is here from Paris. She's calling from Paris, and she has a question that I know affects a lot of women. She has systemic candida, and she's used Donna Gates' body ecology diet. She's making changes, and what she wants to know is, can she use maca or camu camu in her smoothies? She hasn't been able to find out whether that is something that can help her to get rid of the yeast infection. She's taking neem powder. She's 60% raw. She's trying to do absolutely everything, and she says she also takes Cardagic, and it's a form of aspirin, 75 milligrams, because she was a stroke victim. So do you have any suggestions for her? I know yeast infections can be a big issue for women.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we've got to work with our immune system, and we've got to also work with the friendly bacteria. Donna Gates' lifelong work has been on working with candida and healing candida and digestive infections in her body ecology diet. And one of the things she recommends is every day you have a live, cultured, probiotic food.
Right.
A food that has friendly organisms like acidophilus in it, so that you can help to fight back the infections with your natural allies. So these friendly bacteria are natural allies that help us fight back those infections. That's a wonderful thing about Donna's work, is that she really has gotten people to do that. Not just take probiotic supplements, but actually eat the foods that have the probiotics naturally in them. Another thing that I recommend here is horsetail tea. Horsetail nettle tea is really good here. Because horsetail is very powerful antifungal, very powerful. And if you're living in the temperate region of the world, like in France, right, Paris, horsetail is your natural medicine against fungal infections. If you lived more in the tropics, you might use pau d'arco. And not to say you can't use that in Paris, you can use that too. Pau d'arco is P-A-U, and the second word is D''ARCO. That, to me, I love pau d'arco. I'm absolutely in love with that stuff.
She's not allowed to take it because apparently she's not allowed to take pau d'arco because she was a stroke victim.
Okay. So pau d'arco affects your blood, and it affects the profile of your blood. And so if you've had a stroke, that may be a contraindication. But for those of you who are listening right now who don't have that issue, but you do have a digestive infection or candida, pau d'arco is very high on the list. Another thing that's really, really high on the list, and would be really good for this person in Paris, is chaga mushroom. Chaga mushroom
I love chaga. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
my
so
God.
Great. Thank you, David. You turned us on to chaga mushrooms, and they're amazing.
Never. Oh man! I mean, just to get that chaga tea in. I mean, just to be running around Los Angeles and have chaga tea is crazy. It's so great.
Well, that's what I've been drinking all day because I've been psyching myself up for the show. I've just been drinking chaga.
It's awesome.
All right. So this is a last question on thyroid. A thyroid question. Kimberly had a complete thyroidectomy in 2009, and she's heard a lot about not being able to eat certain types of veggies like kale because they interfere with the thyroid function. So her question is, does it have any impact on her since she doesn't have a thyroid glands and she's on thyroid replacement drugs? Can she have those vegetables, or will they still interfere with her thyroid function or in some way? So what would you recommend?
Yeah, no, if she doesn't have a thyroid, she's fine eating 4 to 5 servings of cruciferous vegetables a week. Okay. Let me just explain a little bit about this because there's a lot of confusion about this. Goitrogens are a natural compound found in cruciferous vegetables, but they're much more highly prevalent in wild cruciferous vegetables like wild mustards and wild broccoli. I mean, there's wild mustards that grows all across Los Angeles. It was brought here by the Spanish, and now it's just a weed. It's everywhere. If you were eating that every day, that can have a thyroid suppressive effect because it's got too many goitrogens in it. If you cooked it, that breaks down the goitrogens. You wouldn't have that effect. So if you're going to do cruciferous vegetables and you're going to do them raw, according to what Dr. Jonathan Wright is saying out of his facility up there in Washington, and he's done 30 years of research on thyroid conditions and alternative health care and endocrine health. His opinion is that 4 to 5 servings of vegetables raw is okay for people who even do have a thyroid and have a little bit of a sensitivity to goitrogens, because our conventional or even our organic vegetables in the cruciferous family are domesticated, so they have lower goitrogens than the wild stuff. Okay, so that's why we domesticated these plants, is to get the goitrogens down. So I want to point out that if you don't have a thyroid, you don't have to worry about this. When you're on the thyroid replacement medications, let's say you're on Synthroid, that's a synthetic. I'm much more partial towards the natural, even though it's an animal substance. The animal glandular, the pig glandular, or the cow glandular is natural, and there are some things that can happen later on down the road. For example, 20 years down the road, which is the buildup of reverse T3 in your system. There can be some derivative metabolic byproducts that the Synthroid or the fake thyroid supplement that you have to take when you've had your thyroid removed can cause some later problems. If you're going to go the more natural route, you're better off in the long term, which means you do the animal glandulars. This is for folks who don't have a thyroid or who are on thyroid medication right now. And that's something I want to just point out there, because there are side effects to the Synthroid, the synthetic thyroid, that aren't immediately obvious but could become problematic years down the road.
Great. Okay, we're at 8:10. So what I want to do, David, is give people who are live on the call to take. Can we take 2 calls? Does that work?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then I really want to tell them about the wellness conference and some of these fabulous goodies that you've put together. And I encourage all of you to send me emails so that you can have David Avocado Wolfe back and have an hour with David just answering your questions, because you've sent in so many I can't cover them. All right, let's start with the first person in Estancia, New Mexico. So I'm just going to identify you by where you are so you know it's you. Here's my request, because we don't have a lot of time. Please ask a lasered question and get the answer to that, and don't go into, the next question and the next question. I'm going to take 3 calls. Thank you. Estancia, New Mexico, I'm opening up the lines for you. Please ask your question of David.
I already asked it about diabetes. Thank you.
Oh, okay. You're fine then. All right. Great. Barrie, Ontario. Hi. Ask your question of David. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Great.
Great.
I have problems with hypoglycemia, and I also have fibromyalgia. I just wondered what you could suggest.
Great. And by the way, I'm coming to Barrie. I'll be there April 25th. We've got a wonderful event lined up right down there at the water, so I hope I get to meet you there. Let's talk about fibromyalgia, which has become more and more of a problem, especially in Canada, and it has a lot to do with vitamin D3. So you want to make sure you're getting enough vitamin D3 in your diet. Medicinal mushrooms contain a very high amount of vitamin D2. So that can convert to D3 as your body needs it. So that's another thing that you'll want to look into. Raw foods has a great effect on fibromyalgia, and if you do a high proportion of raw living foods in your diet and fresh vegetable juices, and you get the vitamin D3, the medicinal mushrooms, and then a food that I'd really recommend to deal with the hypoglycemia, which is seaweeds, I think you're going to be really well off. Basically, hypoglycemia is a pre-diabetic type 2 type of condition, and it's usually what's happening is you take in carbohydrates, your body over-responds with insulin. It can actually draw your blood sugar down too much, and you can have a blood sugar crash. So it's kind of an up and a down, and that's the hypoglycemia response. And that's something that millions of people are dealing with, and we want to eat highly mineralized foods in order to reverse that type of condition and get back to homeostasis. And seaweeds are a great food. I like kelp, nori, dulse, hijiki, wakame, arame. There's so many. There's like a dozen at every health food store. And just check it out. It's one of those things. You go into a health food store, you get dulse, and you mix it with a little bit of your guacamole or something, and just taste that, and you're going to fall in love. And plus, dulse is a Canadian-derived food. It comes from Nova Scotia, and you want to source the Nova Scotia dulse. It's some of the best in the world.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. All right. I don't know who this person is. Oh, boy. So I don't know where you are. I'm opening up the line. Can you hear me? Hello? All right. We're going to move on. And we're going to go to Durango, Colorado. Hello?
Hello, David. This is Ariana, Caleb Jennings' mother. How are you doing?
Oh, all right. How are you?
I am hanging in there. It's been interesting. My question actually was related to the fibromyalgia, but I was wondering what you might want to elaborate on with also just chronic pain in general, specifically related to structural body injury that theoretically should have chronic pain, but I know it can be overcome if we handle it properly.
Okay, well, first of all, please say hello to Caleb, and thanks for calling in from Durango, Colorado, which is as close to paradise as we can get. That's an amazing little corner of the world. Okay, so let's talk about pain. One of the things that Clint Ober is going to be talking to you guys about when he comes on Adelaide's show here is he's going to be talking about his discoveries that when you ground directly to the area of pain, after about an hour, the pain will what's the word I'm looking for? It will stop. And the reason for that is that any kind of long-standing chronic pain has something to do with a separation from our earth. So if you can get grounded, especially to the area where the pain is, using Clint Ober's technology is very helpful, then you'll see some benefit there. Generally, when we have pain, it's carrying two messages for us. One is it's telling us that we're going off the road in some way, and if we really meditate on that pain and we really focus on what is it that's going wrong, it will tell us what's going wrong. It will specifically inform us on what the deal is. So we're going to have to really meditate on that pain. Pain has a lot of messages, and this is an area where I've been through a lot of that in my life. I had a very serious back injury in 1989. I was in pain for years, nonstop, from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed. There's people listening right now. You are in the same position, or you're in that same position right now. There's always a way out, but you're going to have to really focus on specific things and solutions for you, and you're going to really have to meditate on what is the cause of the pain. Part of an unknown cause to the pain is our separation from the earth. Go lay on the beach. Go lay on the grass. Get grounding technology. Get grounded when you're sleeping at night. A zapper is a real good idea. I know that you know that what a zapper is because you're Caleb's mom. So check out using zapper in the particular area where the pain is, and then you may also want to explore using some topical amazing substances. I'm a huge fan of DMSO, and I think that's really worth investigating. That's DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide. There's books written on it. Definitely get one of those books, read up on it. Phenomenal substance for joint pain. I write about it, actually. It's all over the Longevity Now program because I don't believe there's enough education about it. I think it's one of the great discoveries of the 19th century. It's been with us for over 150 years. And then I'm a big fan of Ormus Gold. Ormus Gold topically to where the pain actually is very, very interesting. And another thing to be considering as well is pain is going to be occurring where we have low circulation. So getting out and moving, especially the area that's in pain, can be helpful. We don't want to overstress an area that's been strained. For example, I was working on Rodrigo and Gabriela. You may know those two. They're an amazing flamenco act. And he had actually damaged his ulnar nerve of one of his arms. And in that case, you don't want to over-exercise that. But let's say it's an area where there's some lymphatic stagnation. Getting out and moving around can be very helpful to unlock the pain. And by the way, all the anti-inflammatory substances that we've been naming, especially the really pigmented substances like turmeric, really pigmented substances like the berries and berry powders are naturally also anti-pain.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the question.
David, you're my hero. Much love and many blessings.
Thank you. Much love to you as well.
Take care, hon.
Okay, David, I want to tell people about this, what I think is just a fabulous package. I'm just so excited that we're able to offer this to people on the call. For those of you who are hearing David maybe for the first or the second time, you can tell he is an extraordinary fountain of practical knowledge that you can incorporate into your life to heal your conditions naturally. And literally, this call, for those of us who do know him, is so much like, it's like getting a thumb as opposed to a whole body in terms of the wealth of knowledge that he has. We haven't even covered what he knows on his thumb. And I'm really excited because we have, first of all, we have a video compilation of all the sessions that David has done at the last two Longevity Now program. This is going to be available on streaming video so you can see him, you can hear him, you can feel his energy, and you can play it over and over again so that you can absorb this information. Because as you can see, there is just so much information. You can't write it all down. So that is something that you get in this program. And I want to send you to the page because I know some people just want, let me see it for myself. So go to budurl.com/love David. We love David. Easy to remember, budurl.com/love David. So you can look along with me. And the beauty of this is that you get the videos, and this is the first time ever that it's been available in this form. You don't, he's never offered this, and frankly, I had to twist his arm and really talk to the team and say, can we have this? This is what people want, and so we have that available for you. And then you get the Longevity Now program. This is his signature program. The beauty of it is that everything that he's talking about, it not only goes into it in greater depth. You not only get to have videos, you get a 7-CD CD series that really goes into a lot more depth on these topics, but you get supplemental guides, you get calendars, worksheets, and recipes. Oh my God, I'm so happy to have recipes. And he has CDs and booklets talking to amazing people like Dr. Mercola. And he talks about vitamin D, and he talks about the power of mushrooms. You just heard a little bit of it, and you really get to hear this. This is such a fabulous package. I know from having been exposed to David's work, this is great that you're able to have this. And then we also want to offer you a free ticket. David is doing his first Women's Wellness Conference. And David, can you talk a little bit about that and who's going to be there and kind of what motivated you to do this?
This is such an amazing area. What motivated me is I really got deeply into the study of hormones, and women's hormones are more susceptible to being influenced by the toxins in our environment. And I really wanted to get to a level of mastery of understanding not only women's hormones but men's hormones, and that eventually led me really getting deeper into women's health issues, which I think they're more pertinent today and they're more problematic today due to the environmental toxicity and due to the toxicity that's gotten into our food supply. So I've been working with a lot of really interesting medical doctors like Dr. Cass here in Los Angeles, Dr. Patty in Florida. We're bringing them out. We've got Donna Gates coming out to do this Women's Wellness Conference with me. Truth Calkins is going to be sharing the stage with me, which is great. But it's mostly female speakers and very adept healers in dealing with specifically with women's health issues, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be February 10th through the 12th, 2012, coming right up. That's soon, right before Valentine's Day.
It's really soon, right before Valentine's Day. It's in Costa Mesa.
And we will have chocolate there, by the way.
We love it. And the other thing is, David has agreed to give you guys a free ticket for those of you who want to be there. We have speakers on this series like Judith Orloff. She's going to be there. Nadine Artemis, Donna Gates. These are women who are on the cutting edge of this work, and that's why they're part of this series. And you actually get to listen to them, hang out with them, and experience them live. You're going to be offered a free ticket, and it is worth $119. But we do ask that you purchase the ticket so that we can guarantee that when we give away tickets that people are actually going to show up, because these tickets are things that people want. And so you pay in advance, but when you come there, you bring your receipt and you get your money given back. Oh, and you get a bonus gift. And you've got to understand, David is a man who is constantly giving gifts away. If you go to this conference, you'll be blown away. They never stop giving you things. It is the ultimate goodie bag conference. It's amazing. So I'm going to be there. I'm flying from Florida. I'm coming back to LA because I have to be there at this event. So I really encourage you, those of you who can come to California, come and hang out with us. Wellness Revolution, I'm going to have dinner or lunch with anyone who comes from the Wellness Revolution so we can meet. But this is a place where you can really get so much amazing information about your health. And David, I really thank you for doing this, because women not only need this information, but we as women, we share our information. We carry it out into our families and our kids. And it's really beautiful that you are creating this venue where we can get really healthy, and then we can actually pass the word along. And I know that that's part of your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pass it forward. I'm really excited about this whole conference. We're actually very excited about this package that has been put together here. Adelaide, it's great. I mean, we've got on that website, you're going to get the 6 lectures from the Longevity Conference, and we've never done anything like that before. I mean, that was kind of the past to put that all together. The Longevity Now program, by the way, is a complete reference book. It's like a book that you have on your shelf, and you think, oh, what Paudiarco? What the heck was that again? Paudiarco? Let me look that up. It's kind of like that. It's a reference book, but it's also a complete system if you want to apply it in that way. And then the conference, all three of these things, it's quite a deal. And another reason why we have to know who's committed to coming is because we do have a lot of free goodies for everybody, and everybody gets a specific seat. So we have to ground every seat. So we have to have a pretty close number. We have to know pretty closely what the number is of how many people are going to be there. Right now, we're expecting over 400. That's kind of where we're at.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, that's great.
So it's going to be great. Now, that includes all the people who have signed up. It includes all our staff, and it includes, our camera people and all of that. So we're expecting about 400. And we've just got about room for about 500. That's about as big as it's going to get. We want to maintain it just small enough so we can get everybody personal attention, personal time with all our amazing people that are coming, like Nadine, Artemis, and like Dr. Cass, and like Dr. Patty, and Donna Gates,
right.
and Judith Orloff, and the rest of the crew.
The other thing I want to say, again, as I said, go to budurl.com, love David, and we do. There are only 150 Longevity Now programs available, so you need to know that if you are thinking about this package, there are only 150, and when they're gone, they are gone. So take advantage of this. The value of the package is $423, and for our listeners, it's $97. This is really life-changing information, so that's what I want you all to know. David,
That's a good deal. That's a good deal.
It is a great deal. So on that note, we could talk to David for hours, and I know you all have lots of questions. Please send the emails and request. If you want David back for a Q&A, he said he'll do it. So let us know, and please let us know how you enjoyed the call. David, I want to just say, I love David. I do. I love you. I find myself, the more I am exposed to your work, it is so beautiful to see somebody on mission doing something that truly changes lives. And your work has changed mine. And every time I get exposed to another conference or something else you do, it takes me deeper, and it deepens the commitment that I have to my own health and to helping uplift everyone else in terms of their health. We have a huge mission, and you are a big part of inspiring us and helping us get healthier and just more vibrant. So I want to say thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you.
And we love you.
Thank you for your words. Thank you so much. I love you, Adelie, and I love everybody out there who's listening right now. Thanks for your time, for tuning in on this wellness conference. It's a wellness revolution, actually, isn't it? And,
it is. It is.
It's time, right? There's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come, as Victor Hugo said.
Exactly. And this year is the year where let's choose to get healthy and to create optimal health, and then let's share and get the word out. So I also encourage you to invite your friends. I'm coming with a group of my buddies, and I look forward to seeing you at the Wellness Conference. Okay, so now I want to once again thank David, and then I just want to tell you a little bit about the call on Wednesday, guys. I want to just tell you about our call tomorrow. It is with Sheila Gillette. Many of you will have heard of Abraham, Esther, and Jerry Hicks, and Jerry actually died very recently. And they, too, are people who have really brought transformation into the world and helped to impact many, many lives. Well, Sheila Gillette was the psychic who told Esther Hicks what her mission was, who told her that she was going to be visited by a channel, and told her about Abraham. She has been doing similar work with her guides, a group of angelic beings, for 40 years. And the experience of hearing the messages and the guidance that she offers is extraordinary. I actually had the experience of having a session with them at the end of last year, which was part of my decision to come here and to really take my healing to a different level because of the guidance that I received. And I want to bring them on the call because we talk about health and healing at a physical level, and David mentioned that, there's a whole emotional and spiritual level of healing that needs to take place as well. And we are going to be talking about something called soul integration, which is talking about health and wholeness at a very profound level. So I want to encourage you to come and join us. You can still purchase the entire series at mywellnessrevolution.com, WR 2012 sale, and you will get all the links in the email. I want to remind you that you will also get an updated guidebook, a section for the speakers this week, and we look forward to speaking to you again on Wednesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and April, is that 6 p.m. Mountain time?
No, Mountain, it's 5, and Central, it's 6.
Thank you. Thank you for April. So we look forward to hearing you on the calls. It has been terrific to have you there here tonight. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and send us your emails so that we can have David Avocado Wolfe back on a Q&A call. Thank you all. Bye-bye.